Question typically is where to start, what to do, and how to do it. And my hope is that today's panel will help you find the answer to that question, or at least guide you in a direction where you can find the answer to these kinds of questions. We are very fortunate to have three highly accomplished panelists today who, like most of us as Stanford alumni, early on in their careers, they studied in technology, but have managed to make huge strides in social impact. And they are here today to share their thoughts and experience with us. Please join me in welcoming the distinguished panelists of Social Impact Panel. I'm going to start with a brief introduction to our panelists. Our first panelist is Amin Saberi. Amin is an associate professor and three-com faculty scholar at Stanford University. He received his bachelor degree from Sharif University and his PhD from Georgia Tech in computer science. He is a recipient of the Thurman Fellowship and Alfred Salone's Fellowship and several Best Paper Awards for his research in theory of algorithms and applications. Amin is also co-founder and chairman of NovoEd, a social learning environment used by top business schools, including Stanford GSP, Berkeley Haas, and Wharton, as well as nonprofit and for-profit institutions for offering courses to millions of learners around the world. Very pleased to have you here today. Our second panelist is Noosheen Hashemi. Noosheen is a graduate of the Stanford Graduate School of Business. She serves on the advisory boards of the GSP and Stanford Institute for Economic Policy Research and supports research at the Stanford Medical School. In addition to a long career in tech, spanning 10 years at Oracle and several startups, Noosheen, along with her husband Zad Nazem, manages their family office, which includes almost 100 investments in private companies, a public company portfolio, and their family foundation, the HAND Foundation. HAND was founded in 2003 and with the mission of fighting child abuse and growing the global middle class. And over the years, it has expanded to include education, diaspora, and youth philanthropy, entrepreneurship, and opportunities for women and girls. One of the most successful initiatives of the HAND Foundation is providing scholarships to Persian-speaking students to pursue PhDs in the world's top economic schools, such as the Chicago School, MIT, and UPenn. The program's graduates are professors at Sharif, Princeton, and UC Berkeley, to name a few. It's an honor to have you here today. And our last panelist is Zohre Elahian. Zohre has been actively involved in international development for over 15 years. She is co-founder of School Online, a not-for-profit organization that has brought computers to schools and introduced ICT in education in many countries around the world and within the US. As the managing director of Global Catalyst Foundation, Zohre has also evaluated many projects addressing critical needs in education, ICT, and microfinance. She has also served on the board of directors of Relief International for over 8 years, working on different developmental and humanitarian projects in countries such as Lebanon, Palestine, Jordan, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Iran, Sudan, and many others. Prior to her humanitarian activities, she co-managed a successful private business for 15 years, and she is currently on the board of Partners for Sustainable Development, a local NGO in Palestine, Guru Learning, Iranian American Women Foundation, and Polyop. Zohre was named Philanthropist of the Year by PAYA in 2011, and in 2009, she received the Unsung Heroes of Compassion Award and a special blessing from His Holiness the Dalai Lama. It's great to have you here. I would like to ask Amin to kick off our panel with your statement on social impact.
Well, first of all, it's a pleasure to be here with you and with my distinguished fellow panelists. I'm going to tell you about two of my projects, and hopefully you will find them interesting and help us. The first one is NovoEd that Mohammed kindly talked about. It's an online learning platform for social and experiential learning. We started it around 5 years ago, and I had the privilege of working with Farnaz Ronaqi, who was a PhD student at that time. She is now the CTO of the company of NovoEd. Over the past 5 years, we have worked with quite a few institutions. We have offered a lot of online courses for free, and very happy to say more than 2 million people have taken our courses. And The courses are typically in entrepreneurship, social entrepreneurship, leadership. So the people who have taken these courses are usually entrepreneurs and social entrepreneurs. So hopefully they have managed to impact the lives of others with what they have learned in these courses. The second project that's more recent and I'm very excited about is called the Stanford Scholar. The Stanford Scholar is an initiative that I'm doing with another colleague in the School of Engineering with a few postdoc and students at Stanford. We are recruiting people, typically undergraduate and graduate students from all around the world, US, Mexico, China, India, Iran, and we designate them as a Stanford Scholar. And what they do is that they create high-quality educational content, high-quality educational videos together. So this is essentially a crowdsourcing effort. They get together, they identify a paper, typically in a top conference, like top conference in World Wide Web or in neuroscience, bioinformatics, you name it. They understand the paper together, they create slides, and then they create a video that describes the talk, that describes the paper. And this has been actually very high quality in the sense that sometimes the authors of the paper say the video that's created is better than the talk they gave in the conference. So far, we have created over 1,000 videos on these topics, including, for example, a course on programming in 20 different languages, including Persian. And it's actually working with these students has been quite rewarding. And especially given the travel restrictions, now that it's very hard for the students and the scholars to come to the US or to travel, I think together we can help a lot of the students in Iran to create more content, and I'm inviting you to help us, whether it's identifying topics or working with the students to increase the number of topics we cover and improve the quality of the effort. So with that,
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Mohammed, and congratulations to Nargis and the PSA community and everyone who's worked for this special day. Hopefully it's one of many to come. I've been giving and in philanthropy since 1999, so it's about 18 years, but Mohammed asked me to focus on one thing, so I'm just going to talk to you about one thing that we've done today. There are many approaches you can take to philanthropy. When it comes to what we wanted to do with Iran, we decided our focus was going to be economic growth. Iran's been punching below its economic weight for pretty much forever, and there are many factors that cause this. While Iran was never a colony, its resources were drained by foreign countries for many years. For example, when oil was starting to develop, more, as you know, more of the share of the revenue went to the Great Britain than it went to Iran. Corruption has been omnipresent generationally for a very long time. But another thread running through time has been the lack of human capital in social sciences. As a people, we're very proud of our human capital. However, most of the best and the brightest pursue fields like engineering. Until recently, mostly EE. Engineers run Iran. And at the Hand Foundation, we place a high premium on interdisciplinary sciences and social sciences, like economics, sociology, philosophy, cognitive science, history. We think, for example, not enough people in the West understand Islam, and not enough people in the Islamic world have an inkling about Western civilization and what it means. We invest to close this gap. So 12 years ago, we began with scholarships for first-year PhD students to study at top economics programs in US and the UK. To date, we've provided 19 scholarships. I must say that after the door opened, a lot of schools are giving Iranian scholarships without us ever having to do it. So there are lots of people that are going to economics programs without the Hand Foundation because the economics programs have learned what mathematics geniuses Iranians are, and they pursue them now. They want them, where before they were keeping them out. So to date, we've sent 7 people to University of Chicago, the cradle of capitalism, home to 90 Nobel laureates, 3 to University of Pennsylvania, 2 to MIT, 2 LSE, 2 UT Austin, 1 Northwestern, 1 Harvard, 1 Berkeley. we engage a larger group of economics and finance students through an annual conference that we've been convening since 2008. We began with 25 people. We tried to limit it. We've had up to 65 people in the conferences. We improve and tweak it each year. At our conferences, we have discussed Iran's economy, heard seminal paper presentations directly from top economists in the world, including Nobel laureates and Iranian economists, visited top university campuses. We've toured Washington, D.C. and IMF, World Bank. We've heard job market papers and provided feedback. But most importantly, we always have sessions on horizontal skills, like how to interview for jobs. This is for academic jobs in economics, how to interview for jobs, how to break out of a plateau and take on new research, how to find life-altering co-authors for papers, et cetera. So we built a virtuous network of mentorship where people who are ahead sort of help the people that are new. And you mentioned some of the places where people work, but our professors are now consulting Iran's government. They are asked to go to Iran during Christmas time. There's an economics conference where they're advising the Iranian government economic policy. So it's paying off fairly quickly in just 12 years. So when we started, there were probably 200 Iranian economists. Maybe 5 of them could connect the dots on a global level, like a Janet Yellen would. We hope to have grown that number to maybe 10 or 15 by now. And maybe before I die, we'll get an Iranian to win a Nobel Prize in economics. That's my dream, but it's really not my dream. It's kind of our community. Anyway, what we know is that we've made economics fashionable for Iranians, and hopefully they try it. They now understand not only what a beautiful science it is, how challenging it is, but also how critical its mastery is to running an efficient and competent economy and growing economy of Iran, hopefully. If you can increase the GDP just a little bit, it lifts the whole country. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me. And I wanted to apologize in advance to make this personal journey, to clear what the social entrepreneur and what is social impact meant for myself and for the foundation that I'm working with. So 1999, first time I had my own business, and it was first time that I was going with the school's online team to a trip and to a refugee camp. So I was talking to a gentleman over there, and during this conversation, he mentioned something that it was a turning point in my life. Coming back to home in US, in the plane, I told Cameron that I'm going to quit my work and I'm going to do the nonprofit work full time. So we started the foundation in 2000, and then for the first 6 years, I traveled to the field because I always believed that in order for me to learn something, I need to do something in the field. And I even lived with in developing countries, in the countries that I have worked, between 3 months to a year and a half. And I would go to different places. There was a joke that friends and family, whenever there was a war or there was a disaster, natural disaster, they would say, Zohre should be there, so we should not contact her. So anyhow, and then during that 6 years, I learned that I have to listen. I have to listen to people. I have to really know how they are feeling. And in order to do that, I have to live like them. So after that, when I was hearing from all the beneficiaries that the main thing for them, even in very dire places, they were saying that we need the education for our children. So we focus on education and on technology and education because it would enhance and it would make it faster for many people, like children in refugee camps right now. So we focus on education in first non-formal education for refugees, and then formal education in countries that I'm right now working. And through all these years, I learned that at some point all the nonprofit work, the NGOs that we are working, they need to scale and they need to sustain. So they need to revenue and generate revenue. It's at some point the for-profit and nonprofit it integrated and it's almost the same. And the last company, I guess right now 1/3 of my time is allocated in for-profit company with the focus on education, is revolutionizing the learning, and it focus on learning by doing. And it's Polyop, and I'm sure you all know that you know Dr. Tabesh, and the Polyop is brainchild of Dr. Tabesh. So now at this stage of my life, I'm involved in for-profit, but with the social impact. And the other the program that we have, the project that we have is still there, and I travel still to the different countries, and I feel blessed. Thanks.
Thank you very much. We actually have a lot of questions about whether to focus on profitability or not, and I'll get to that. I just wanted to ask first a general question from each of you. So it looks like the common ground between all three of you is the topic of education. But each of you have taken a very different approach to that. So you have taken a very specific way of approaching this problem. And my question is, how did you end up doing it that way? Or was there an aha moment that you thought, this is what I want to do and this is what I should be doing?
Well, I would say my approach is technology-driven, just because I'm a computer scientist by training. The way it came about was that at the height of the sort of focus of Stanford and a few other universities on online learning, what I realized was that their focus is more on this transfer of knowledge from the university, from the professor who's sitting here to students all around. It's like the idea was that we have all the insights here and we should teach people around the world. And I thought that was wrong, in a sense that education, and Zohre talked about this, is not about giving answers. It's about asking questions. It's about helping the student, helping the learner learn by doing. So we try to build a platform that connects the student together to help them form teams, for the teams to take on projects that are relevant to the social context of the learner, to what they care about, and help them build what they find interesting. So that was the starting point, and sort of naturally my background in understanding social networks and social web helped us come up with a new design. But sort of mostly it was the start was this question of whether the kind of education that we are offering on campus or online, whether it's empowering a student, or is it with this idea that no, actually, sort of the students should, sit down and we know everything and we got to, just drop knowledge on them.
Thank you. So my approach was more from an institution building standpoint. So there were a number of factors. Like I said, I was giving since 1999, and what I was observing about Iranian nonprofits versus what I was observing in non-Iranian nonprofits, it was a huge difference in institutional thinking. And institutional thinking is a whole huge discipline in social sciences and economics and other political economy and politics, et cetera. And I realized this was lacking. 2,500 years under a one-man rule, we don't have very strong civil society. And so I wanted to build institutions, and I that led me to lack of social sciences. I zeroed in on economics because I thought you can't build, cash is king, the world's against you, they want to cripple your economy. So what do you do? So I wanted to develop sort of knowledge in that area. And So that's kind of how I started. I sort of put $5 million in my pocket, went university by university, including this university, Stanford, went to UK and US universities on the East Coast and in London, et cetera, in the UK. And I said, I want to put up a think tank on Iran's economy. And of course, every time I mentioned, sanctions don't really work and da-da-da-da, and people would say, yeah, these are economists and, administrators and faculty. And I would say, yeah, they'd agree. And the minute I said Iran, the Iron Curtain would fall. So I realized that I couldn't do very much with that. No one was interested in growing Iran's economy. Everybody was interested in killing Iran's economy. So I decided, so I started interviewing Iranian economists, whoever I could find. I interviewed over 120 people. And one of them said, the best return on your investment is first-year student scholarship, because once people take a chance on Iranian economics PhD student and they see how good we are, then they get TA jobs the second year and then they're fine. And he was absolutely right. He is the preeminent Iranian economist, Hashemi, who's probably the best person we have in the world who's of Iranian origin. He was right. What an investment. Much better use of funds than anything else we could have done. So our view is institution building.
So for me, it was a bit different. I just listened to people and to their quest. And education has been equalizer, in my view. And the aha moment was the first time that I owe it to this guy that in a Gaza refugee camp, that the name was Beach Camp, first time that I mentioned that I was there. And there was a very happy guy, and he asked us to go with him to his place. It was a very small room. 6 people were living there, and when he was explaining about his life, and he was telling us that he has the master's degree in physics and from Moscow University, but he has ended up in that refugee camps. And while he was telling all these things, he was smiling. I told him quietly that, can I ask you a question? And he said, of course. I said, why are you smiling all the time? What's going on? You are living in a room that half of the roof is falling apart, and you're still smiling. And he said, come with me. So as soon as we stepped out, he looked at the Mediterranean. It was a beach, the Mediterranean Sea, and told me, this is my source of enlightenment and happiness. What else I want? But promise me that you bring education for my children, for the children of these camps. And at that point, it was the aha moment for me.
All right, thank you very much. I think if I want to summarize, one lesson is to address the right question, invest in right people, and be a good observer. There are... I'm an engineer. I'm used to bullet points, and not to diminish all the personal story. All right, so there are a lot of questions about profitability, and I guess you have also mentioned in your speech. So people have asked, do the social impact projects that you are involved with, do they usually get to profitability or not? I think I can combine it with another question that says, what is the most impactful way of social impact? Is it better to be for-profit or non-profit? Maybe we can start with you this time.
Yes, of course. But we learned this lesson after maybe 7 years of working in non-profit, the NGOs that I'm working now. I guess the funders and the contributors, now they are asking, 5 years ago, they were asking them to have sustainability and scalability in their plan. So my role was bringing the knowledge of the technology to these NGOs and working with them to come up with the scalability and sustainability to generate revenue. And right now, most of the NGOs that I'm working with, 80% they are generating revenue themselves, and 20% are still depending on the outside grants. And as far as the for-profit and non-profit, the non-profit companies, they have a huge social impact. For me, for example, Google has a huge social impact. Maybe at the time when they started, they didn't plan on this, but it happened. It has brought lots of knowledge. So for me, it's the same. It depends on if you can, on the for-profit, if you can, I guess, focus on the social impact of the product and the policies in the company.
I would say I don't see the world as so binary of nonprofit versus for-profit. I think in the nonprofit world, I completely agree with Zohre June that you need to have sources of income. And I believe that sustainability and scale will only come through earned revenue in nonprofits. I think you can use philanthropy dollars for innovation. So it would be a really well-run nonprofit should run itself, but it should use philanthropy money. Go ask donors, I want to do this new thing, or this thing that I just piloted, I have a great playbook for, and now I want to grow it, pay for that. Or to really use capital, philanthropic capital very smartly. So that's how I would look at it on nonprofit. On the for-profit basis, there are so many things we can all do. I just started a company, a precision wellness company. I wanted to go back to the dark side, sort of full-time, but I couldn't see myself, and I wanted to work on healthcare for sure, but I couldn't imagine waking up and working 14 hours a day, 7 days a week to make insurance companies richer or to make drug companies richer. I can't do that. I can't work like that, all in with heart and soul to make other people richer. So I'm focusing on the consumer and focusing on what's best for the consumer. So let me tell you, I'm doing that for social impact. There's no question about that. But the trick is, what I really want to cover, what I want to make happen, which really excites me, is how can I make this sustainable? How can I make this pay for itself? That's the ultimate question. How can you help people and not harm them?
Challenge, especially let's say if you want to start in Silicon Valley, the challenge is if you start a nonprofit, it is harder to find technical talent. You have to compete with the startups that offer equity, they offer perks, they offer cheap VC money, and that's hard. On the other hand, if you have two bottom lines, one is social impact, and then the other one is the return on the investment of your investors, you have to find investors who are aligned with you, who are patient, for example, if you're in the education space, because things take longer, much longer. And that's also, it has its own challenges because a lot of times, venture capitalists try to have a return on their investment in, 7, 8, 10 years. That's how their funds work. And finding the right kind of money is not easy.
All right, thank you very much. I refrain from summarizing this question. We have a couple of specific questions for Noosheen and Zohre, but let me ask another general question first, which is probably related to what you said. One question is, do you think there is enough will to engage in nonprofits in Silicon Valley? I think your answer is no. But
No, I don't nearly have enough experience, actually. I think, Noosheen June has it.
Well, I think so. I think in Silicon Valley, we do three things. We work, we have families, and we do philanthropy. That's it. And you are not a respected member of Silicon Valley community unless you are giving of your time and of your resources. We are expected to have philanthropic resumes as we do professional resumes. So the will is absolutely there. However, the billionaire class, they usually they sort of have their own sort of causes. They convene their own salons. They're sort of a closed, they run their own little fiefdoms, their own, and they meet up in these sort of world conferences. But overall, I would say Silicon Valley is extremely philanthropic. I do have a tiny bit of sarcasm now about, I don't know if you've seen the memes on Facebook, et cetera, that, the Tesla driving, cappuccino, the Tedster, Ted going, people who just miss the whole poverty and everything in America, just sort of completely, supporters of Hillary who just didn't get it. So I think we're all guilty of that on a meta level. But I think on a day in and day out basis, there's tremendous amount of will, there's tremendous amount of money that goes to philanthropy in Silicon Valley. And I'd like to see more, that's for sure. For the billions that exist here, I'd like to see a lot more.
I have nothing to add. It's something that I really is hard to answer. That what does it mean enough? So I don't know.
All right. There is one question for Noosheen. Human science is pretty restricted and being reformed in Iran, and they are excluding many worldwide topics. How do you fight against that direction?
Well, I think the Iranian educational system, I can't impact that directly. All I can do is we can train people. Basically what we can do is the people who are leaving, to try to convince them to study things other than electrical engineering and those kinds of things, or study in addition, or do interdisciplinary work. There's nothing wrong with W. That's built the world. That's fantastic. But we also need the human side to build the world. We can't build the world without that. And so I think the best we can do is to have people who come in. I've taken a portfolio approach. People have asked me, how many people do you have scholarship money left for? We have at least 100. We have unlimited. We have low supply, actually. We'd love to have more people that we send to these schools. And we've taken a portfolio approach. Some will go to the IMF to work. Some will go to World Bank. Some will teach in academic institutions in the US. Some will go to Iran and teach at Sharif and other universities. They have, multiple of them have. We mentioned the one in Sharif, but there are others. So it's a portfolio. Some go into industry. It's very important to be good at the private sector, critically important. That's how the world goes around. So we can't affect that. What we can do is try to convince the best and the brightest to take a more interdisciplinary approach to their education and hopefully have an impact on Iran that way.
Thank you very much. I also want to add to that from my own experience. When I came to Stanford and when I look back at previous generations who came to Stanford, majority of people who naturally came from EE ended up staying in traditional areas of EE. There are so many circuit designers in Silicon Valley who are Iranian, one of which is me. Or there are so many communications experts. But I see this trend in more recent years that people who come from Iran, even with EE degrees, they end up going to other schools once they are here. And I think it's something that needs to be encouraged, to encourage students who come from Iran to open up and be open to exploring other things. And money plays a role there, because a lot of people, when they come here, their insecurity is money. You don't have financial aid and also that kind of thing that limits you, that makes you, that takes away your courage.
Right. I want to say here and now, if you know people who can get into undergraduate programs from Iran, if they can apply to programs like PPE, PPE is go look up it's politics, economics, and politics. No, it's PP is politics. No. Sorry, I should know this. It's I think it's philosophy, politics, and economics. I don't remember. PP is a very famous discipline. It's taught at Oxford. It's taught at Pennsylvania. It's taught at Yale. It's taught at many places. If Iranian students from Iran, Persian speaking, by the way, they can be Afghan or Tajik or whatever. We're very open to anyone who speaks Persian can get into PPE program or some of these other distinguished programs. We will pay for it. So if you know of people, please encourage them.
Good to know. And there's one question for Zohre. Philanthropy fund comprises a small part of the money to deliver meaningful humanitarian aid. How do you see the role of government in humanitarian aid?
Sure. Government has always played a major role in the humanitarian work, but majority of the places when the disaster happen, when the war is going on, the government, I guess they might not have the resources that they had before. So then the role of the both UN and the NGOs, the civil societies, it's very prominent, and but they work directly with the government, and the endorsement and support of the government is always needed. Myself in BAM, when BAM earthquake happened, I went after 27 years back home, and if it wasn't because of the support of the government and endorsing the government of Iran, we couldn't do the work that we were doing in BAM. So it's needed.
Thank you very much. I think we are almost running out of time, and I have a commitment to the next moderator not to eat out of their time. So I want to ask one last question from each of you, and I'm going to time this. What is your 30-second advice for prospective social influencers? Start.
I don't have any advice.
You can't get away like that.
But I have a question. Actually, I was contacted by somebody to be on the, some board in Iran for the gifted youth, and the email to me sent as a gifted, sort of person, and I thought, what does it mean? Am I gifted, and what's the form of this gift? And I'm, sort of asking all of you, I don't think this is an innate ability. It's actually a gift that we received from teachers who didn't see their job as a, low-paid job. It was actually a calling from a family, from a society with who valued education. And I guess all of us are making conscious decisions on how to give this gift to the next person. And I'm hoping that we all think about, who is the beneficiary of this gift, the seed that was planted and now is bearing fruit. Who is enjoying this fruit?
You were only 30 seconds. 30 seconds.
So my, not advice, but I would say don't start a nonprofit. Join one, and join one that is well run. Learn real skills like fundraising, critical. Learn the art and science of fundraising. It can help any organization you're with, in your company, in a nonprofit, Iranian or not. And then take philanthropy as seriously as you take your professional work, right? Look for the right need that needs to be met. Go at it professionally, learn from the
30
best,
seconds.
Stay focused on results.
Sorry.
Perfect.
So for the ones that are starting or involved in the for-profit companies, please make sure that the social impact is an integral part of your CSR, and demand for it if the company that you are working is not doing it.
Thank you very much. You're the only person below the 30 seconds. You made up for Amin. All right, with that, I would like to once again thank all our panelists for being here and for sharing your insight and experience with us, and for wonderful conversation. And thank you all for being here. Thanks.
Thank you.